Another quiz tomorrow. Okay, so distributive property. You know, this is the textbook definition of it, right? Distributive mixes multiplication and addition. So usually you've got a number outside parentheses, and then inside parentheses you either got a plus or you got a sum or a difference. Evan, Connor, right? So does this look familiar to you from what you learned about that? Now, I would say that sometimes I've seen students that, let's say it was an evaluate problem, and it was, you know, let's say I had, where is my pen? Let's say I had something like this. Maybe it says 3 times x plus 2 and x equals 4. Evaluate. So what do you do with the x? Yeah. You plug it in for the x, right? So at that point you've got 3 times 4 plus 2. Okay, which is what this says right there. Okay, what would you do with 3 times 4 plus 2? Say it again. Okay, but realistically, order of operations says if you know both of the numbers in parentheses, add them up first. Don't distribute 3 times 4 and 3 times 2. That is how distributive property works. But if it's actually all numbers in the parentheses, definitely add them together first. So 3 plus 4, or 4 plus 2 is 6. 3 times 6 is 18. I mean, they're showing you all this here without variables because, you know, they assume at this point you may not have, you know, gotten to the variables. Yeah. You would get the same answer. But order of operations wise, you generally, you know, you go to parentheses as top thing, right? Go inside the parentheses, simplify that. Don't make it more complicated for yourself. Now notice the other thing is that they're showing you that sometimes you can be, the number that's multiplying outside parentheses, that can be on the left or it could be on the right. Right? It could be either one. Still works the same. So here's some examples. And they include some variables, right? So the letter A, 4 times y plus 3 is 4y plus 4 times 3, which is 12. Okay, the letter B, the y is on the right side. So first they're going to do the y inside the parentheses times the y that's outside. So if you multiply something by itself, that is called squared, right? That's why they're calling that y squared. That's not 2y, that's y squared. And then you've got the y, the 7 times y to get 7y. So here they did the same thing, right? They multiply n times n, and that's n squared. And then n times negative 9, negative 9n, minus 9n. So sometimes we're going to be making squared terms. And, you know, I've seen plenty of times people call that 2n or 2y. And it's not. So there's going to be, now this is your U-tries. We're going to go through 4 of them, one at a time. So do the first one. In fact, you can do all 4 of them. So the first one, 2 times x, 2 times 3. Quiet, please. You know, when I'm going around looking at this, you may have had the distributive property before, but the majority were not getting all these right. And these should be things that you get right, like at the 99% level. Just the only thing is sometimes you make a silly mistake, but for the most part, we shouldn't make these mistakes. Right, this is 2 times x plus 2 times 3, which is 2x plus 6. I saw a few 2x plus 3s as an answer. So why is that wrong? Yeah, you didn't multiply all the terms. No, you just 2x plus 6 is fine. Yes. Okay, how about the next one? What was that? I mean, what does it mean that there's a negative sign in front?
It's like -1,
It's like there's a negative 1 if it helps you. So you could write it like this. Negative 1 times 4 minus y. All right, and then you got to go times negative 1 times 4, negative 1 times negative y. What is negative 1 times 4? What is negative 1 times negative y? Negative times negative makes positive, right? Should have been negative 4 plus y. Okay, how about the next one? It's now we're multiplying on the right, so the first multiplication's got to be negative 3, or m times negative 3m is negative 3m squared, right? When you multiply an m times an m, you got to make it a squared. Okay, and then what do you get if you multiply negative 5 times negative 3m? Positive 15, right? Okay, and the last one? Yes, Hunter. What's a negative times a negative?
No, I mean,
for number 3? Okay, last one. What is 2n times a half? Quiet. It's 1n, right? So there's the first is n. And then what's 6 times a half?
3.
Plus 3. Okay, so we can use distributive property to simplify algebraic expressions, right? So these are 3 examples of doing just that. You know, it gives you something to study. When you're doing the homework, if you don't go back and look at your notes or watch the video, look in the textbook. This is just copied out of the textbook from last year. You know, it just gives you some examples. Notice, yeah, they show that, notice on letter C how they show that negative in front of parentheses is like multiplying times negative 1. And then they did it. Negative 1 times 2x and negative 1 times negative 11. Okay. So with those examples, now you try to do those.
That's the same one.
Are those the same ones?
Yes.
Did I copy the same thing?
Yes.
Or did I go backwards? Okay, then we'll move on. That's okay. Vocabulary. So you got to know what these words mean, because I'm going to use them on a test, and if you ask, you call me over, what does that mean? I'm not telling you. That's what you're supposed to learn. Right? A term in an expression is separated by plus for addition or minus for subtraction. So in what they've got right there, there's 3 terms, right? Because there's 2 pluses to divide them up. Connor, you know, a lot of joking around and everything means I'm going to put a 0 for classwork today, okay? Well, look, it's pretty constant out there. So that's, I'm not just talking to you, okay? I'm just saying, that's what's going to count. I just start taking off your classwork, and that counts as your homework category. Okay, and I'll let parents know I'm doing it and why. Okay, so terms in an expression are separated by plus or minus. The operations, not like negative signs. Okay, when you have a variable like x is in 2 different terms there, and there's a number in front, that's called coefficient. Right, that's a coefficient. And I'm going to get to the like terms on the next slide, but if you look at the last number, it doesn't have a variable. So that's not a coefficient. Coefficient is the number that comes in front of the variable. Since there's no variable, you call that a constant term. Constant term. And what is x? X is a variable. So expressions are made up of variables, coefficients, constants, operation signs. Notice that on the first one, since it says negative x, the coefficient is negative 1. So like terms, if you say you have like terms, that means that they have the same variables raised to the same power. And even if you have like 2 constant terms, then those are like terms. Were you presented with like terms in the past as a concept? Okay. So, in this problem, I think you have two homework problems like this. You got to read the directions, right? The directions say identify the terms, the coefficients, and the constant terms. So in this expression right here, how many terms do you see? 4, right? Because they're separated by 2 minuses and 1 plus. That makes a total of 4 terms. Okay, so what are the terms? And they've done it in this problem. They've already done it, right? It's 3x. It's negative 4, right? The term is not 4. It's negative 4 because of the minus in front. Okay, and then it's negative 6x and 2. So 4 terms, and just write them down. Okay, like terms have the same variables raised to the same power. So which are the like terms in that expression? 3x and 6x. They have the same variable, x, and it's raised to the first power. If one of them was squared, then it's not a like term anymore because they don't have the same power. And then the negative 4 and the positive 2, those are constant terms, and those are considered like terms. Okay, what are the coefficients on the x terms? The 3 and the negative 6 are coefficients. I'm going to ask you a question on the test where you have to answer coefficient, and you have to spell it correctly, okay? Okay, so you combine like terms. You combine like terms by combining, meaning adding or subtracting, the coefficients. The variables stay the same, right? So if you add 2 x terms, you get an x term. It doesn't become an x squared term, right? When you add terms, you don't change the variable. So for example, in this problem, we have to simplify. Okay, so which property does it look like we're going to have to use first? Distributive, right? So this is going to be 4 times n and 4 times 9. What is that? 4n plus 4 times 9? 36. Okay, next, negative 3 times 2, negative 3 times n. What is that? Negative 6 minus 3n, okay? Now we're not done because now we have to combine like terms. If there are like terms, you got to put them together. How do you combine the 4n minus the 3n? You add or subtract the coefficients. So that's 4 minus 3 times n, which is going to be 1n, and 1n equals n. So you just say n. Okay, then what is 36 minus 6 plus 30? So n plus 30. So first you got to do distributive, then you got to combine like terms. So try that one. Okay, so this is going to be 5 times 6 and 5 times n makes 30 plus 5n. Many of you didn't write 5n. You just wrote down n. So that's kind of fundamental. It's like, okay, then you're flunked the distributive property because that's what distributive property is. Okay, now the negative 2 times n is negative 2n, and negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. So make sure you flip the sign. Okay, now which are the like terms that we can combine? Okay, 5n and 2n, those are like terms. What do you get if you combine them? How many n's is that? It's 3n. Okay, and what do you get? These are the constant terms. 30 plus 4? 34.
No way.
That's it. So do your homework.